Welcome to the Intelligent Community, ICF's podcast that explores economic and community development in what we are coming to call the digital decades. I'm Robert Bell, a co-founder of the Intelligent Community Forum. Now, if you don't know us, ICF provides assessment, certification, and membership for cities and regions. We provide training for community leaders and an annual award program that honors citizens and regions for building innovative, growing, inclusive, and engaged communities. And in these digital decades, which have already seen so much change and so much disruption, that is no small feat. I'm speaking today with Brian Snider, founder and CEO of LIT Communities, a network company unlike any you have met. LIT works with communities, suffering from a lack of affordable, reliable, high-quality broadband. Now, the company begins that with an in-depth assessment. It produces an action plan for connecting the community, and from there they offer support with RFPs and referrals, or they provide a complete turnkey solution that can include creation of an internet service provider. But from beginning to end, they insist that the community be a full partner. And that's what got our attention at ICF. Building networks is hard, it's complicated, it's expensive, but ultimately the issue isn't the network. It's what the community does with it to improve education, to expand opportunity, to spark economic growth, and to engage its people in making a better future. Now, with its unique approach to municipal networks, LIT is doing what we think, frankly, every communications company should be doing. Brian, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Robert. That was very nice words there at the end. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everything you've done with the Intelligent Community Forum. It's great what you're doing to support bringing broadband to where it isn't. That's really ultimately what we're trying to accomplish. So thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So this year, ICF worked with your company to develop a report. It's called Building Success for Your Municipal Network. And it combined the experience, this enormous experience that LIT Community brings, with ICF's own experience working with a lot of communities. And the report outlines 7 principles for developing and deploying a network. And I have to say, when I finished the work on it and went back and looked at it, it was not really the kind of advice you would ordinarily get on the topic. For instance, the first principle is to think through how to motivate the private sector, which you just referenced, to invest in networks in your communities. Now LIT Communities had some very specific advice about how you do that. And what is that?
I think the municipalities and governments that we've worked with, counties, regions, one of the things that we really try to do when we handle our community assessment is show them that they have a lot of in-kind contributions that they can provide to a private ISP that is no cost to them whatsoever, but could still provide incentive to the private industry that actually reduces capital cost or speed to market, where they can bring in revenue faster, where you can have blanket permits in regards to the right of way. If the municipality owns the poles, you could have one-touch make-ready requirements and things like that. Reducing permitting costs. There's so many different items that just happen on a day-to-day basis that you could work with a private partner. And I say a partner, that private partner also needs to work with you. And that's also, whenever I say that, the municipality has to think of that first. Is this private partner looking out for both of us when they're working and they're talking to us? And sometimes you got to go out on a couple dates first before you can figure that out, right? You know, ultimately, when you're working on a P3, a true P3, it really is kind of like a marriage in that sense, because you have to be completely transparent, open, and honest. And I think that's why our markets have been successful in where we're going and or where we started and where we're going. So I think that's different than what most private ISPs are going to try to go in and do. I think then the piece of that, because they're supplying that to us, let's say as a private ISP that we set up locally, we can then provide revenue sharing back to them. Because if it lowers our CapEx, then it lowers our capital costs, that lowers our cost per household pass, which then we can share in revenue through revenue from the consumers that we sign up, or different methodologies that we work with the community on. And we're very, very transparent when we do that. So it's different, but it's starting to take shape. The big part of it too now when we used to think that municipalities wouldn't be able to move forward because of they had to raise bonds, it was going to have to be voted on, it was going to be a longer process. Well, that's the benefit of COVID. Now there's funding that we haven't seen before. The municipalities now have the decision power to make, and there's no coincidence you're seeing a lot of the larger ISPs work on what they call P3 partnerships. Be careful what you hear and read in the papers outside of what your report was. What you read out there in other methodologies and what true P3 partnerships are. You gotta peel back the layers of the onion to really see what it looks like when you do that. And like our model is different, but we can prove that it works.
Like the legendary princess, you have to be willing to kiss a lot of frogs.
That's the truth.
Yeah, it's very interesting because listening to you, one of the classic complaints you hear constantly from the private sector trying to sell into local municipalities, state governments, and such, is that it's just the sales cycle goes on forever and you can't make anything march forward and so forth. And yet, what your company has done, in addition to, I think, creating these true relationships, is you've created a method that actually engages municipalities all along the way, which enables them to move forward. I think it's one of the things that really struck me when I first started looking at your company. But let's keep moving on here. There were two other principles in this report that, again, we sort of developed together, and they both seem counterintuitive to me. One was to do what you just described, targeting investment to this middle mile, and the other was to make digital equity and inclusion central to the design. So let's unpack that. What is the middle mile, and why is it important?
Yeah, so the middle mile can be classified as a lot of different things, I guess, when you look at it. Some people call it a backbone network, some people call it the middle mile. I like calling it the middle mile because it's the middle portion of what gets us to the last mile piece of access. And when I think of last mile, it's the parts that go down into your neighborhoods and down some of your main arterials, but most of your middle mile network is going down some of your major arterials in a strategic way. So we look at a middle mile network as it is a network that the municipality owns. We still build it out in the same architecture, even if we owned it, because it creates redundancy and diversity around the entire city. So if it creates that, we think the municipality should own it. We think they should put it underground. We think that it should connect their anchor institutes, because it will then turn into what some people call the backbone of a network. We consider the backbone more of the national backbone, or where some of these interconnections are going to ultimately happen, so you can get carrier service to the middle mile network. The other piece of it, though, is if all they were providing is dark fiber services, they are not an ISP, they're not competing. All they're allowing is for their residents and their business owners to be properly connected to the internet service they should have been connected to a long time ago. And from that side, also, what it has created, and now people are starting to see this, especially the more and more communities we work with, and once we explain it to them fully, and that's why our community assessment is so important, because we work with them hand in hand. We want them to fully understand each step of our community assessment process, so when they get the business plan, they choose how to move forward again. We're not going to choose for them. That's not our model. That's not the way we do things, because we're not going to be in every city. We can't be. That's not how. There's too many homes that need connectivity for us to be able to do that, and we're definitely not going to overcommit and underdeliver. But from that side, if you think about this, if a community is providing just dark fiber infrastructure to a private ISP and is incentivizing them and lowering their costs to build to a home to connect, you can do that in every state across the country, because they are not an ISP. That municipality is not providing any service other than a dark fiber connection, just like a open conduit from that sense. And so that's why we've always felt like the municipality should own that, they should control it, and then they should partner with the private ISPs to connect to it. But since they're providing that connectivity, that's how the partnerships ultimately have to work together, right? Now, some communities, after we go through our assessment process, want to go past the middle mile network, and that's great. That's their choice. Again, they even want to be the ISP. Again, in states where they can be the ISP, which is that needs to change too.
The second part of this is that second principle that was so counterintuitive to me is that you wanted to focus on digital equity and inclusion, and I have to ask, why are you going to focus your network on people who are not yet broadband subscribers?
So it's funny you say that, because I also had somebody else ask me a question when I told them that we're going to create a digital equity and inclusion program in all the markets that we work in. And they said, "Are you nuts?" And they said, "No ISPs do that in any of their markets. ISPs are looked at usually as the enemy in certain aspects, and they're not working with the community. And we have to remove that stigma. And just because somebody hasn't done it, doesn't mean they can't do it correctly in the future. It's how it's done. And the ACP program has provided help, obviously, to residents to be able to pay. But what else has an ISP done to allow a low-income family to get out of being low income? Because the one piece that I think, regardless of if you're low income or you're rural or if you've only been connected to a 25/3 offering or satellite internet, and you all of a sudden are connected to a fiber connection, you don't know what you don't know. And so you don't know what that network is even capable of from that standpoint. So we look at a digital equity inclusion as a completely different standpoint than the way other ISPs do. You are actually teaching the skills and workforce and training, and workforce, I think, is a separate word from digital equity and inclusion. I don't want to say that, because I think that gets misinterpreted and a completely different definition. Digital equity and inclusion, everybody first has to have proper access, right? Then it has to be affordable, and then the third A, ultimately, I can't remember what it is, but you have to have the tools and training to be able to do it. And everybody learns at a different level, and everybody knows at a different level. Like I said, you don't know what you don't know. So if I provide better connectivity to an area, let's say they also qualify for ACP. Great. We've given them, and we provide our lowest ACP programs that are for free are 100 in our markets, and most of them are going to be 250 in our markets where we feel like they should be from that side. And those would be completely free to those areas that qualify for ACP. ACP is going to run out. That unless I hope, and I hope that continues, obviously, because it's been a great program. But right now we have to plan on that it's going to run out. So we have to figure out other ways to basically get folks out of low income, have them have the ability to sign up and use these networks. And we do that through working with great partners like Connect Humanity and a lot of others out there, PC for People, where we first have to get them the device. After we get them the connectivity, and then we have to take them through, okay, I've never turned on a computer, or I've never submitted a resume. I don't know what it's like to set up a bank account. I am not sure how to, they might have all of those skills that we just described, but they don't know how to work on the next level of technology to where I want to learn how to, let's say, just do drafting and design, but I don't know where to even start next, or how do I go to online school? How do I do telehealth? It then just ripples. And so in my mind, we need to go into those communities. We're not the ones that are doing this, though. We have to find the local advocates within the community that we help them teach the local communities how to do this, because they're the ones that are actually doing the work. And we're not the ones that are going to come in there and step on their toes at all. So during our community assessment, we find the local advocates, we find the ones that are going to be able to support these initiatives that we roll out, and then we teach them the proper tools, techniques, and training to initiate a proper digital equity and inclusion program. And people can continue telling us we're nuts until we change. And I think this is the thing that I want people to fully understand. This is more than a utility than any utility we've ever had, because we can take somebody that's low income now because of working at home, because of working remotely, because of educating remotely, because of telehealth remotely, all of those things. If you don't want to have that for your resident, but if somebody has that and understands it, they're no longer low income, because they will be able to find a job. They will, if they want it, they'll be able to go and do it from that perspective. And I think, why not try? And from that side, if I think we're going to surprise some folks, especially in some of the markets we're going in. And I can't wait to show the data, just like we showed from our public-private partnerships with the middle mile aspect of it.
I can't wait for that either. I mean, we know this stuff works because communities do it, and it's not expensive. It just takes time, effort, and usually not too much money. So yeah, we've seen a lot of huge examples of this. Moving on, LIT Communities generally recommends optical fiber as the core of a municipal network. And having looked at some of your assessment reports, I can see that there's always a phrase, yes, it costs you more upfront, but it's worth it. So the question I have for you is, why is it worth it?
As we know right now, it's future-proof. From everything that we've seen, fiber's been around for a long time, more than people know, and we haven't seen it, really stop working. From that side, everybody says fiber has this lifeline of like 40 years. I think it's longer than that, just because, we still haven't had issues from fiber that's starting to be over 40 years old now. That's just a number people threw out, I think, early on when they were trying different things. So when you provide that all the way to your home, you're setting yourself up for the most connectivity you need. Now, I say all that, the electronics at the end of the fiber is also extremely important in regards to how things are run. I think when you look at a lot of the 5G and wireless technology that's being applied out there, I think it's important, and it's part of these networks that need to happen, because in certain aspects, there's areas that are so rural, just to get there with fiber, it's going to take so long. You have to potentially serve them wirelessly. Even if you get subsidized funding through federal and state government, it's just going to take long to build to some of these areas. And we're looking from our side on how do we get some of these areas wireless service first while we build fiber. You can use the revenue from the fiber services that you're providing to basically pay for the fiber. I mean, from the wireless services to pay for the fiber to build out to the home. So that way it's at least getting them something better than what they have. And I think that's important, but you are never going to get, right now, you're never going to get faster than the speed of light. I know there's all kinds of things being developed and items like that. And fiber is the only thing that provides the speed of light to your home, to where you can have 10 gig, and eventually we're going to have 100 gig to our home. And it's crazy. People thought you were crazy when you said you were going to need 1 gig. People are now saying you're crazy, you're going to need 10 gig. In 2 or 3 years from now, they're going to be saying you're crazy, you're going to need 100 gig. The evolution that's happening, wireless is not going to be able to keep up, except for the Wi-Fi that's happening in your home.
Yeah, I was one of those people who said, "What are you going to do with that?" And of course, the answer is, "Well, give it to me, and we'll figure it out." Now, every community that's thinking about building a network comes face to face with a risk, right? Financial risk, the risk of being blocked by lawsuits, execution risks. Now, one of the principles that was in that report is that you can offset some of that by developing regional partnerships with the communities and organizations around you. Now, how specifically does that help?
I think that's the more and more that we've worked with communities, it's one of the biggest drivers that move things forward. And especially when we work with the economic development groups and part of the municipalities, they're usually the ones that start bringing all of these other regional, even regional, but also local organizations into play, because I don't care what anybody tells you, there's no one company that can do this. There's no one municipality ultimately that can do this all themselves. And when I say that, it's each department within a municipality that might, in certain aspects, the way the municipality or the government set up might not ultimately flow in the same verticals, right? So in order for this to ultimately work, it has to be not necessarily even a regional play. It's also a multi I guess, partner from local utilities to water districts to, I mean, it's every layer that you can think of that's going to be part of this project that you won't really actually realize it sometimes until you get into the thick of it. It's like, we need to make sure we talk to that railroad department. We need to make sure we talk to the small business coalition. What about all of the medical and industrial parks that are happening out there? What about the county that's right next door to us? They're building a fiber network too. Let's go talk to them, see how they've done certain things and how they can bring the multiple partners into play as well. I think that's the piece of the P3 that's important to us too. It is hard to bring all these entities together, especially when it's government. I will say that. I guess that's one part that we are unique, as it takes a lot of patience from that side too. But patience pays off when you do get the right groups together, working together. It's really cool to watch it all come together, and it helps the diversity of the network and how it can get created from local partners working together from all aspects. The last mile network kind of evolves along itself, and it's almost like the ideas are coming from the community, not even us from the private industry, and that's when it gets really cool.
Well, yeah, and you are talking about massive risk reduction, capital sharing. I mean, yeah, it goes
Oh
on and
yeah.
on and on. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have got to end it there, which is a shame for me because I've been having a heck of a good time here. You have been hearing from Brian Snider, founder and CEO of LIT Communities. LIT has a very bright future ahead of it, which I think is a pretty awful pun, but anyway, because as you mentioned, governments at national and state levels are making serious money available for expanding broadband. So I really wish you and the team just continued great success, Brian.
Thank you, Robert. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everything you're doing at ICF. It's awesome for the industry. I appreciate it.
Thank you. If you'd like to know more about LIT Communities, you can find them at litcommunities.net. That's N-E-T. For more on the Intelligent Community Forum, visit intelligentcommunity.org, O-R-G. ICF offers an intelligent community certification program that provides independent validation of your community's high-quality connectivity, its effective workforce development, business innovation system, and meaningful community engagement, digital inclusion, and sustainability programs. It can make a major contribution to your economic development profile. So if you're interested in that, learn more about it at intelligentcommunity.org/certification. Our Community Accelerator online training program gives the elected, the administrative, and the volunteer leaders of your city or region the tools they need to create the change that they seek. Illustrated by case studies and videos, the self-paced courses offer essential guidance in creating a successful economic and community development strategy. And you can find out more about that at intelligentcommunity.org/accelerator. You can follow ICF on LinkedIn or Facebook by searching for Intelligent Community Forum. We are the only one. On Twitter, look for @NewCommunities. And thank you for listening. For the Intelligent Community Forum, this is Robert Bell.